Well, yeah, yes, some news just some hours ago. Robert Mugabe, remember him, former Zimbabwean president, is dead. Well, he died at the age of 95. He reportedly died in a hospital in Singapore this morning. So for those who remember, he served as the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe 1980 to 1987, and then as president from 1987 to 2017. So Emerson Mnangagwa, the president, is speaking on Twitter. He has confirmed that. So he also has said quite a number of things about that. But at the moment, we're joined by Nigel Nyamutumbu, who is a journalist in Harare. She joins us on Skype this morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so at the moment, this is an unfortunate incident for Zimbabwe. Could you tell us about this now? What is the mood in Harare at the moment?
Well, generally, Zimbabweans woke up to a relatively shocking news of the passing on of former President Robert Mugabe, who served the country for 37 years as the leader. Well, there is a general sober mood and then a bit of mixed feelings, because on one hand, people acknowledge the role that Robert Mugabe played in the liberation struggle for the country, and the role that he played as a founding father of the country, from black emancipation, empowerment, and general development, as it were. But they are also quite cognizant of how his legacy was tainted by years of misrule, of tyranny, and also of a bit of hatred with his own people. But suffice to say, no one can take away his liberation credentials. No one can take away what he did for the African continent. And indeed, no one can take away that he was a giant, not just for Zimbabwe, but for Africa.
What legacies can you say that he left? What are they talking about in terms of the legacies he left? Because now you've spoken about the general mood. There was also the mood when Mnangagwa came up as president. So in context of all of those, what can you tell us about his legacies?
Well, for starters, together with other liberation icons, Robert Mugabe's name certainly features predominantly in the formation of the Pan-Africanist movement. First, that even then established the Organization of African Union, and also the Zimbabwe African National Union Party, which has been at the helm of the country since 1980. And generally, he was instrumental in negotiating for the talks in Lancashire that then brought about Zimbabwe's independence in 1980. He was the leader. He led both the troops from the front, and indeed, he is one person that would be remembered in generally the African Renaissance and even the transformation of the OAU into the African Union and into pursuing ideas of Pan-Africanism, the ideology of self-emancipation, the ideology of liberalization, the ideology of equality among blacks, whites, and then of people of color, and so on. Ideology in terms of even ownership. That is of equal distribution of natural resources, land, and so forth. So he does leave an indomitable mark insofar as ideological Pan-African ideology is concerned, but at the same time, he then also over the years left a huge dent on his legacy when he would not relinquish power, when he would seize over his opponents, political opponents, and then when he would generally preside over violence against his own citizens. And that is something that you can also not erase from his history. So on one hand, we do celebrate and acknowledge all that he did for Zimbabwe and for the African continent, but also really just recognize that we can draw lessons, that you can be revolutionary, but also not necessarily leave your ideals.
Just one more thing before you go. How do you see or think that the current government in Zimbabwe will honor him?
That's a very big issue here in Zimbabwe. At least that began as a fortnight ago or so, when there were, talks around him having said that you would not want to be buried at the National Heroes Acre. We've got one of the country's national monuments is the National Heroes Acre, where national heroes compared and laid to rest. And then so he has said, apparently, told his family members that he would not want to be buried there for what happened in 2017 when he was ousted in a soft coup, as it were. But the government did send emissaries to him to try and convince him and to try and still recognize him as a national hero. And we are most likely going to see a battle of his body, a battle of ownership of his ideas and ideologies, and we are also likely going to see some contestations around where his body will actually be laid to rest. So it's certainly indeed something that is a developing story, as it were, which will obviously be keenly following. But one thing that I would say would definitely be clear is the government would declare him a national hero, which a lot of people would not have real qualms or real opposition to. But how the funeral is going to be handled, who is going to preside over it, and where is certainly something that will be keenly following to see whether this late revolutionary turned ruthless leader will be finally laid to rest.
All right, then, Nigel Yamutumbu, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Sure, it's been a pleasure.